But going back to careers, sometimes we stay small because you told yourself the window of big things has passed. Okay, the window is still there. Your view of it has changed. There's this clock that nobody hands you, but somehow everyone seems to be living on the same page. Somewhere along the way, you were given the schedule of these unwritten expectations, whether it's married by a certain age and this many kids and this home and these many degrees. And you're just like, hey, is this my timeline? Is this something I asked for, or is this something that was handed to me? So today, we're talking about adjusting your timeline and living the life based on your time with the energy that you have to give and the values and the purpose and everything that means something to you. So we're going to ignore the milestones and the impossible expectations that are set. And we're going to find 5 ways to reconstruct a timeline that fits our purpose, our values, and brings us joy. So sit back, relax, and welcome to Adjusting. And we're back with another episode of Adjusting Podcast with your host, Justin G. Nelson. So we're back. We're continuing on with part 3, adjusting your center, building a life around what matters, and you matter. And I'm really just trying to be more mindful as we move into like the second half of 2026. um, I want this season to be one of those standalone seasons where nothing is contingent to the calendar, but to your calendar. And it's that fits with the theme of the day of adjusting your timeline. I love that. But before we get into that, I want to thank TJ with TJ podcast for editing, and thank you all for subscribing to the Substack channel. It serves as the hub for my company, Pacific Cup Studio. So you'll see book content there. Hopefully, as soon as life slows down over here, I can get back to my food content. But everything works together. Everything is flows from the same cup, and I love that. So I can't wait to explore more there. However, you're here for mental health content, so great. But be sure to share this with anyone who could use some support and reminders and some aligning and adjusting for their mental health journey. So if you are driving, please focus on the road. I don't want, any distractions for these breathing exercises. But if you are in a place where you can ground yourself for this episode, I invite you to do so now by joining me in doing a 4-7-8 breathing. So if you're new here, we breathe in for 4 seconds, hold for 7, and release for 8, just to recalibrate our nervous system. Okay? So plant your feet flat on the ground. Relax your ankles, relax your shins, relax your thighs, relax your hips, relax your stomach, relax your chest, relax your shoulders, relax your neck, relax your chin, relax your cheeks, relax your forehead, close your eyes. We're going to breathe in for 4, hold for 7, and release for 8. Begin. Breathe in, 2, 3, 4. Hold it, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Out, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Let it all out. Let it all out. Great. And then now we're going to do 1 deep breath in and deep breath out, just to get anything else out that might be blocking you from receiving this content today. Okay. Breathe in and out. Whew, great. Okay. So I know we're very familiar with this topic, okay? And in my my research and my study, and it's funny because a lot of the books I read for leisure, I never plan with the episode, but it never fails that the theme of the week correlates with the book. Okay. So today we're talking about adjusting your timeline. Stop racing a clock that was never yours. Mm. A lot of this is inspired by a recent conversation I've had that deals with capitalism. And I want us to deconstruct that. And the word deconstructing is becoming one of my least favorite words. So until I find some other words to use to replace deconstructing, we're deconstructing. All right. So, section one, addressing. What is it and where does it come from? So, let's define this invisible timeline. Simply put, the invisible timeline is the unspoken schedule that society has placed upon you based on your family, your race, your gender, your society status, where you live in the world, your culture, things like that. It's like the when, the where, the how, the what of your life. Again, you didn't ask to be here, but as soon as you were pushed out the womb, okay, that's when the clock started ticking, and then you knew by the government standard there was school, okay, but now there's this pre-K thing, there's the pre-pre-K, there's the K pre-pre-K, K pre, there's the your child was pushed out, they can see, cry, talk, let's get them started timeline. And I'm just like, damn, why do we have all of this? And I get, you want your child to grow up to be the best, and you want your child to have what you didn't have, or the child wants to have what they weren't given. But then the older you get, it starts to sound like you should be settled by now. You should have all these degrees by now. You should have kids by now. You should have your own home by now. Why are you still figuring it out? And it's not one big announcement. It's like a slow drip. Okay? It's that one comment at Thanksgiving. It's the for performers. It's the so what's next? What's next? A lot of people don't understand there's a lot of traumatic things that happen to a performer during a contract to make some of us not want to jump from job to job. Okay? Because our schedules with 8 shows a week, that Monday, that one day we have off is not enough. Okay. And you only see the stage performance, you don't see the rehearsals and everything else that goes into it. So stop rushing us to book stuff back to back. We need the money, yeah, but some of us save, some of us have a savings, some of us have plans. But like I said, it can be that comment at a holiday gathering. It can be a social media post. It can be someone else doing better than you. A well-meaning question, but it stings, and you're just like, I'm not ready for this. Like, why are you rushing me? And the dangerous thing about this invisible timeline is that they operate below conscious awareness. Y'all know what that is. You're not sitting here thinking, I've adopted a culturally constructed schedule for my life. You're just feeling anxious. You're feeling behind, and that is worth naming. Okay? So, where do these timelines come from? Tradition. Number one, tradition. This is the by the time I was your age pressure. It's in the family systems, faith communities, and sometimes the rituals we grew up watching. Someone before you hit a certain milestone in a certain career at a certain age. And somewhere along the way, that became the blueprint. Now, I get graduation from high school is one thing. College, on the other hand, I don't know about that, you know? Not because anyone sat down and said that's the plan, but because that was the milestone. The bar was set, but those milestones, those disappointments, and those offhand comments have a way of writing themselves in our bones. And then tradition isn't it's not bad, but an inherited timeline you've never examined isn't wisdom, it's just a habit. The second thing is capitalism. Again, hustle culture is the devil. But it has its own clock and it runs fast. You monetize early, take advantage of this. And I hate that everything is becoming trademarked. Like I get protect your stuff, but that little girl that was like, I'm trademarking hot girl walk and hot girl reads, and I'm like, girl, go touch grass. Like I don't, and that's hurting. She was I don't want to say that, but yes, they were of a different hue. The productivity obsession, that's a thing, doesn't just shape our careers, it seeps into how we feel about every, sorry, about how we feel about every area of our life. Are we optimizing? Are you ahead of the curve? Are you making the most of your time? This whole concept of systems, like, I don't think people grasp that this new trend of, you don't have a productivity problem, you have a systems problem. And if you sign up for my masterclass today, I can teach you how to have better systems to automate and prepare you. System sounds like racism. Okay. And I don't like it. I understand what it is, but it's the same thing as having a to do list or using Monday.com to accomplish the same things. Yeah, AI is great. Love it. But a lot of times we take ourselves out of the project and the creativity for the sake of productivity. And again, that is hustle culture with a cute wig on, okay, and maybe some press on nails. There's nothing wrong with taking your time and getting dirty, you know? But AI, capitalism, hustle culture has taken that out of the process, that out of the timeline. And I wanna remind you, it's okay to slow down. It's okay to do that. Capitalism needs you to feel behind. A person who feels behind is a person who buys things, classes, courses, chases credentials, and keeps grinding. The urgency isn't accidental, it's an added feature. And the last thing is the culture. Your culture makes you have this false timeline. Because culture is the water we swim in. It's the engagement announcement, it's the baby showers, it's the home buying post with that ugly key. It's the it's what gets celebrated publicly and what goes quietly unremarked. Every culture has its own version of the right timeline, and most of us absorb ours without even questioning it because it's just everywhere. It's everywhere. Someone got another degree, someone got a job promotion, someone has moved, someone's traveling abroad, and you're just like, I should be doing more. I should be doing more. I should be doing more. You what you're doing is enough. What you're doing, yeah. And the problem isn't that culture has value, it's that we rarely stop to ask whether those values are actually ours or whether we just never had space to find out. All right. So, how racing someone else's timeline shows up. I'm going to hold your hand through this section because I'm going to step on all y'all toes, okay? In relationships, staying in the wrong one because you're scared of starting over too late, or rushing into commitment because it feels like time, or grieving being single because you thought you'd be farther along by now. Number two, in career, taking the stable job instead of the creative risk because security sounds responsible at this stage of your life. Don't get me wrong, baby. If you can find a job that gives you good health insurance, all right, you can get your teeth done, your eyes checked, and a good physical, keep that job for a little longer, okay? You need that stability. That's important. Or measuring your salary against peers and deciding you must be failing. We all know that black women are severely underpaid in the workplace, okay? They can do, what's the Olivia Pope and Eli Pope speech? You can work twice as hard to get only a fraction of what the other people get. But yet we're racing and overworking ourselves. I'll never forget my mom. I'm so happy she retired when she did. I listen. This when I knew we were best friends. I would stay up till 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning with her working on projects for work. And it wasn't like she wasn't working at work. She just had to bring work home to get the, and I was just like, I don't like this for her. But it was those timelines. Not that she wanted she was a senior something. Um, so it wasn't nowhere else to go up for her. She hit that thing, but it was still that timeline of like the deadlines, the um, unspoken expectations set upon her by other people on the team because she was good, but because she was black. But going back to careers, sometimes we stay small because you told yourself the window of big things has passed. Okay, the window is still there. Your view of it has changed. In creative work, waiting until life seems settled and you're in a settled down place to create. I As creators, I don't think we ever get a moment where things settle down. And it's not that we're always keeping up with the algorithm or chasing trends. It's just if you, like myself, are a team of one, that moment things settle down, you're just like, and it's not the other shoe is dropping. It's like, I missed something. I forgot something, or I can catch up on something. Telling yourself you'll start the project when things make more sense. Watching younger creatives and wondering if you have missed your moment. And again, we have to remember some of these people come from money. Some of these people work a 9 to 5 that you don't know about. Okay. They have that income coming in, but they don't want you to know that part. And in daily life, it's the low grade restlessness, the sense that you should be further along, the feeling that everyone else got their manual you never received, the quiet shame of not having it together. So, what does it cost you? What does it cost you by running on someone else's clock? We make decisions from pressure instead of desire. We choose milestones that look right on the outside but feel hollow on the inside. We hit benchmarks and wonder why we don't feel anything. You got this certification, now you're just like, okay, what's next? We stop listening to ourselves because the timeline isn't asking what you want, it's asking what you've done. And when you're focused on doing the right things at the right order, there's no space to ask if you actually want them. Okay? You feel behind, which is one of the most corrosive feelings there is. Behind on what though? Behind compared to who? You know? But the logic doesn't help when you're sitting in it because the feeling is real even when the timeline is made up. We miss our actual lives while chasing the projected one. A lot of people go to school, get these degrees, because their parents wanted them to get it. And I'm glad my mama and dad didn't talk me into getting like a computer science. So it's just like, you can sing. You got a scholarship in music. Go for music. You will figure it out. Okay? We raise you with the mind to figure it out. But the moments, the seasons, the unexpected paths that were always right in front of us missed because we were so focused on where we were supposed to be. Now, I didn't talk about like the spiritual aspect much, but for those who grew up in a faith tradition, the timeline pressure can be especially layered because it isn't just cultural, it was theological. Okay. There was a God ordained order with purity, you know, courtship, marriage, family, and stepping outside of that order, even in Pride Month, by choice or by circumstance, could feel like spiritual failure, not just social inconvenience. If that's part of your story, I want to name something. Deconstructing a religious timeline is its own kind of grief. You're not just letting go of a schedule, you're letting go of a framework that told you what a good life looked like and who you were supposed to become inside of it. That's significant and it deserves more than just let it go. We'll work on that though. Okay, but growing up in a religious space and having things thrown at you without a proper consideration of who you are. And don't get me wrong, I still go to church. I go to church every week. I go to church everywhere. I work for a church. But it's still that personal work that is done outside of church, whether you are like Bible studying or just having men's group or women's group or conversations or finding more books and stuff to read. You start to look at it as I want it to work for me, but I have to find the roots of my growth, and not everything that was planted into me. Like, you grow up in the church, you go to Sunday school, you learn about the Ten Commandments and the Lord's Prayer and the Beatitudes and all of that. And then you start learning about the story of Christ, which essentially is the whole Bible. And then you get introduced to other characters and da 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 da. But when the themes come in and are weaponized to point out a certain demographic or group of people, whether it's women, whether it's the LGBTQAI plus community, it's never rarely the men. Never the men. It's always the women. It's always the women. And I'm just like, how do we get here? If it's men, it's like men be better husbands or be better leaders or be better this. And it's always women be better why women can't be better leaders, anyway. So number two, uh adjusting, learning to recognize the borrowed timeline and start building your own. So how to notice when you're running on a borrowed timeline. Now don't get me wrong, the life you're living now is was given to you by God. Okay, what do you do with it? That's what we're talking about. How to notice. So check in on the feeling behind the goal. When you think about the time or the thing you're chasing, what's underneath it? Genuine desire or low grade dread? Is there excitement or is there mostly relief in that idea of not feeling behind anymore? Pay attention to the supposed to language in your own head. The should must statements. I should be further along. I'm supposed to have this figured out. I should want this by now. These are not your thoughts. These are borrowed scripts you've been reciting so long that they started to sound like your own voice. Notice when you're reacting to someone else's life, when a friend announces a milestone and you feel some type of grief or shame, not just about them, but about yourself. That's the timeline talking, not you. It's the timeline. And then the last thing, ask yourself who decided this was the right pace? What voice does the timeline sound like? Is it a parent? Is it a pastor? Your high school friend group? A culture that told you what kind of life was worth having. Name it. Name it. Name it. Because once you can see where it came from, you can decide whether it still belongs to you or not. The difference, listen, the difference between a goal you want and a milestone you feel pressure to hit. Genuine goals feel expansive, okay? You want them because they align with your values, with your purpose, with your potential. They shape who you are. They make you get out the bed every morning. Your vision for your life, your version of a full life. They make you feel like yourself when you think about them. Now, borrowed milestones feel like deadlines. There's urgency, there's anxiety, there's stress, there's a sense of racing. You want to hit them mostly to stop that anxiety in your nervous system from working overtime and to stop feeling behind. And the relief of reaching them is usually temporary because the timeline just resets to the next thing on the list of things that other people have set for you to do. The real question to ask isn't, am I on track? That is not the question to consider. It's on track for whose life? Slow down long enough to actually ask that. The answer might surprise you. So, again, the real question isn't, am I on track? It's on track for whose life? Mm. This connects again to the should must statements from part one of this season, where we started identifying the cognitive distortions that drive our internal narrative. Should must statements are borrowed language. They come from outside, they masquerade as wisdom. Part of building your own timeline is learning to catch them. So, I want to briefly talk about what it looks like to grieve the timeline you thought your life was supposed to follow. Because grief and shame show up a lot when you're healing and when you are recentering yourself. Because if you are a recovering people pleaser, if you're a recovering people pleaser and you understand and you relate to feeling like you're letting someone down or letting something down, this is why I make this series. So this is real and it's not talked about enough. When you realize you're not going to hit a certain milestone in the order or timing you expected, whether by circumstances, financial, whatever, or loss, or by choice, there is grief in that. Not weakness, it is grief. Grief is the version of your life you imagined, the relationship you thought you would last, the career that didn't take the shape you planned, the family you thought you have by now, the version of self you thought you would have together. Disenfranchised grief is a mental health term worth knowing here. It describes grief that isn't acknowledged or validated by those around you. Grieving your timeline often falls into this category because people don't always understand what you've lost, but you do. And that is what matters the most. So you can grieve the plan without giving up on the future. Grieving doesn't mean giving up, it means honoring what you thought your life would look like and then gently, slowly creating space for what it actually could. Okay? So I just want you to sit with that. I wanted to slow down a little bit to talk about grief because we we don't name the grief. We call it depression, but sometimes it's a grief, and they can work together or they can exist in the same space. But I just want you to name it. Um, but what it looks like to start building a timeline that is actually yours. It starts with values, not milestones, but values. So ask yourself what you actually want your life to feel like, not look like, feel like. Is it fresh linen in the morning or coffee first thing in the morning? Not that you got up and made, but like the smell of coffee coming from the kitchen, whether your partner made it for it or you have a new coffee maker that'll make it for you, okay? It's no emails first thing in the morning. It's reading a book, okay? Sitting, feeling the pages, like sensory things that you can feel. What matters most to you in this season? What kind of person do you want to be? What experiences do you want to have? Let that be the compass. This connects directly to a previous episode, the centering work from last week. Building your own timeline isn't about letting go of the borrowed one, it's about getting clear on what you're actually orienting your life around. When you know your center, you stop needing the borrowed schedule to tell you if you're doing okay. Your seasons matter though. Where you are in life, what you're healing from, what you're building, what you're carrying, that context is real. A timeline that makes sense for someone without trauma, financial hardships, chronic illness, or a complicated family system doesn't automatically apply to you. Okay? You're not behind, you're just in your own season. A life rooted in your values will always look different from the projected version. And that's not failure, that's the whole point. And for my Christian, faith based, spiritual people, okay? For those of you walking away from a faith based timeline, this section might really stir up some things, okay? Because for a lot of us, the alternative to the religious framework was nothing. Or at least it felt that way. If God wasn't scripting your life story in a particular order, then who was? Or how do you build a timeline without an anchor? I want to offer you this. Building your own timeline doesn't require certainty about what you believe, it requires clarity about what you value. And sometimes the most honest thing you can do in a season of deconstruction is sit with the question instead of rushing into a new season and clearing the clutter in your life, which consists of other people's expectations, and listening clearer to God's voice. A lot of people neglect the power of solo prayer. You ask people to pray for you, okay? And I don't mind people praying for me, but I don't want to tell the whole story and then they shift the prayer to fit. So you get down on your knees, you journal, you pray, however you want to do. But having a clear, honest, raw, vulnerable prayer with God, that, okay, together, your timeline will look beautiful. I want that for you. Okay. So, section 3, applying. 5 things to consider as you release the borrowed timeline and build your own. Okay. I want you to picture this. Picture this new timeline you're on. Now, I don't talk about this a lot, but there's this thing called the Schumann resonance. And it's basically the earth frequency. And if you know me, I'm into astrology and tantric yoga. I have crystals and I do a lot of breath work. We did that together with the 478 breathing. And I'm also into understanding frequencies because we as a culture always talk about the energy wasn't right. That's frequency. But y'all say, well, that's the devil. No, okay, you're stupid. Okay, that's stupidity. No. But frequency as it relates to the earth often shows up when a disruption happens at the earth core. We feel it, but we don't know what it is. That's the Schumann resonance. Another thing is the timelines. Now, this episode, again, is timely because apparently we're shifting timelines. If you watch anything dealing with Marvel or superhero comic things, and they talk about like different variants of a person. So, like for instance, in this timeline, you know me as Justin G. Nelson. In another timeline, I could have been another person. Okay. But I still had the same mission which was to inspire people, to encourage people, to educate people, to share or spread awareness of mental health, to perform, da 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 da. But I didn't do it as me, I did it as someone else. So I just wanted to throw that little psychological tidbit in there. Anyway, number one, get honest about whose voice the timeline belongs to. Before you release something, you have to identify it. So this week or next one or the next month, I don't care when you do it. Start listening to the timeline voice, the one that says by now and should and falling behind. When you catch it, ask, whose voice is this really? Is it a parent, a culture, a version of yourself that learned early that worth came from productivity and milestone hitting? The more specific you can get, the less power it has over you. You don't have to confront anyone. You ain't got to call nobody and say, well, you lied to me. That's not what this is about. It isn't about blame. It's about tracing the wire back to the source so you can decide consciously whether you still want to be plugged into it. The second thing, separate urgency from desire. Okay? It's just like, this is going to be very graphic. A lot of people during sex rush to the climax and ignore the intimate moments. Separate urgency from desire. Start noticing when you feel urgency around a goal or decision. Urgency is information, but it's not always trustworthy. Sometimes it's genuine excitement and momentum. Sometimes it's timeline anxiety dressed up as motivation. One way to test it, slow down on purpose. If the desire is real, it'll be there in 3 days. If it evaporates when you stop reaching for it, it was probably pressure, not longing. You get to want things slowly. You get to, you get to want things slowly. Love, you get to want that slowly. Success, you get to want that slowly. Peace of mind, you get to want that slowly, intentionally, on your own terms, dressed up in something that looks good to you. Desire doesn't have to have an expiration date. Number three, let yourself grieve the projected life without making it mean something is wrong with you. If you're adjusting your timeline intentionally or by circumstance, you're going to feel some grief. Okay, just let it be there. Grief doesn't mean you made the wrong choice. It doesn't mean you're broken. It means you had a vision, okay, and the vision is changing. That is a part of the human experience. It's just like when you are debating someone, okay, and you gather more information. If you're a mature human, you can change your mind during the debate now that you've gathered more information. That's actually a sign of self awareness. The goal isn't to never feel the loss of the projected life, the goal is to feel it without letting it convince you that your actual life isn't worth having. Number four, define what on track means in your own words. This is an exercise, okay? Sit down with some paper, a note app, a whiteboard, whatever you want to use, and write out what a good life looks like to you. Not what it looks like to your family, not what it looks like on social media, okay? But what does it actually look like to you? What do you want to feel in a typical week? What relationships do you want to be in the central part of your life? What kind of work do you want to be doing? Where do you want to be going forward? That's your compass. When you have your own definition of on track, the borrowed one loses its grip because you have something to compare it to and you can see clearly that they were never the same race. And number five, practice being exactly where you are, not as resignation, but as radical honesty. I love like radical and liberation and radical liberal. I like those words. This isn't toxic positivity. I'm not saying love your life as it is and never want more. I'm saying be honest about where you are, not where you thought you'd be. Because when you were always living in the gap between where you are and where the timeline says you should be, we miss the life that's actually happening. We miss the connections, the growth, the small things that are actually being built towards something real. Presence is a practice, and one of the most subversive things you can do in a world that's constantly measuring you is to genuinely and fully be present here in your own season, on your own timeline, building a life that's actually yours. So here's what I want to leave you with today. The timeline you've been racing was never actually yours. Someone else handed it to you with a long list of expectations, okay? And most of us have been running it ever since, adjusting your pace, measuring our progress, feeling behind on a schedule that we never agreed to, but you get to put it down. Not because your goals don't matter, they do, but because the only timeline worth running is the one that was built around your values, your purpose, your season, your definition of what life actually looks like, what a full life actually looks like. That's the work, not catching up, not hitting the milestones or the next benchmark, just getting honest about what you actually want and giving yourself permission to build towards that. Okay? So until next week, keep adjusting, and I'll see you then. Bye-bye. Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode. I hope you take something away to help you make the adjustments you need. Before you go, please take a quick second to share this with someone you care about. And if you can, please leave a 5-star rating and review on whatever platform you're listening to this on. For more information about adjusting or to inquire about being a guest, head over to adjustingpod.com. Until next time.